These people clicked on a video called Understanding the Trinity. You're not gonna. Oh, there's a lot of truth to that. There's a lot of truth to the fact that you're just not going to understand the Trinity, and there's some reasons for that. Um, some very significant barriers to our understanding of the Trinity. Now, quickly, a definition, as simple as you can, I guess, definition of the Trinity is this: within the one being that is God, being a central word, within the one being that is God, there exists eternally three co-equal and co-eternal persons. Within the one being, there exist three persons, all co-equal, all co-eternal, namely the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Now, the barriers to understanding this idea are significant. The first one being simply human language. That is, we are trying to use finite words to describe infinite truth. Trying to use finite words to describe infinite truth, and that is going to be difficult because that is indeed impossible. We are describing things that we simply can't grasp, that our minds are not really made to comprehend. Our minds are made to think in finite things inside this universe, and God is outside of that universe. Outside of this universe, He's outside of time, and we struggle with thinking temporally, to think outside of time, and to think in any case above the universe, in any way that transcends the universe. Like when you close your eyes and try to think about the reality that God never had a beginning, and how that kind of hurts your mind. You feel the limits of your mind when it comes to the infinite. The same thing is true with the limits of our mind when it comes to understanding God. And part of understanding God is understanding Him in His Trinitarianness, that He is indeed three in one. An illustration I've used before is like if you floated up on a deserted island, and on that island there was a group of people who had never seen anything from the outside world. All they knew was on the island. They never saw a ship come by. They never saw a plane fly overhead. They never saw anything. And it was your job to explain to them what an airplane was. What would you say? You'd probably say it's like a big bird that carries people or something like that, right? That's about as good as you could do. They don't know what metal is. They don't know what engines are. They don't know what stewardesses are or pilots or peanuts, maybe. I don't know if peanuts are tropical, whatever. There's all these things that take place on an airplane that they would never even begin to comprehend because they don't even have the categories to understand what you're trying to explain to them. And that's a not perfect example, but an example of what it is for us to try to understand God. We are trying to understand things and grasp things that we don't even have categories for. We don't even know how to begin to explain, to understand who God is. For example, anything we come in contact with that is new, the way we understand that thing is by comparing it to something that we already know previously. For instance, in the Cajun community, whenever we introduce a child to gator meat, for instance, we would say something like, it's like tough chicken, right? It's not chicken, but we would say it's like tough chicken. So the child knows basically what this meat is going to be like. It's going to be like chicken, but a little tougher, a little harder to chew, right? So we compare it to something that we know already. We know what tough means. We know what chicken means. And so we can compare, we can have an idea about what gator is. But when we come to something entirely unique, we can't compare it to anything else that we know because it's unlike anything else we know. One of the foundational beliefs about God is that He is unlike anything else that exists. He is unlike anything else in the universe. He is wholly other, entirely different than everything else. What He is unlike everything else that you know that exists. And so to say God is like blank is going to, by its very nature, bring you into some dangerous territory, into the territory that the ancient church called heresy, and that simply brings you to a false view of God because we cannot fully comprehend God. And listen, if what Christianity teaches is true, and that when you come to think about the God of the Bible, the God that transcends the universe, that caused the universe to come into existence in a moment, in a breath, who spoke for the light to come on, and light could not come on. That kind of God who is transcendent above all other things, that is absolutely holy, absolutely perfect, the standard of our, and the ground of, ontologically, of our morality, that kind of God that exists from eternity past, who is unchanging, who declared the end from the beginning. If that kind of God is the one you are coming to think about, coming face to face with here in the idea of the Christian God, if that kind of God is not a little bit bigger than your finite 32-year-old mind can handle, then it's probably a God that we've made up of our own imagination and not the actual transcendent God that exists. God should stretch your mind. if God doesn't stretch your mind, again, it's probably a God that we've made. Think about the reality. If God is who he says he is, who the Bible says he is, this transcendent, infinite being without ends, and you are what you are, a person who's lived on the earth a few decades and has a mind that's only capable of so much, then there should be some parts of that God that you just can't fully grasp. So, an issue is that we understand new things by comparing them to other things that are similar, but there is nothing similar to God. Therefore, we cannot understand God beyond the kind of uh, anthropomorphic ways that he describes himself as in the Bible, right? There's parts of him, we can understand part of him as the king, part of him as Lord, part of him as Father, but we can't understand all of who God is, especially we see that in his Trinitarianness. Um, we don't encounter many truly unique things, so normally comparisons work, but God is indeed truly unique. Isaiah chapter 40, verse 18. To whom then will you liken God, or what likeness compare with him? Or verse 25. To whom then will you compare me that I should be like him, says the Holy One? There is nothing that we can compare God to, and so to say God is like this in his Trinitarianness is to be dangerous. He is totally unique, unlike anything else, which makes him tough to understand. Now, we have tried to understand him, and we have tried to understand him in his Trinitarianness in particular, and we've made some mistakes that the early church called heresies. For instance, some of the popular illustrations maybe you've heard that we really shouldn't use for this reason. One of them, for instance, is that God is like water, that it's ice in one state, that it's water, liquid water in another state, that it's vapor in another state. Or that a man, like myself, is a father and a husband and a son, 3 in 1. This is referred to as the heresy of modalism, which was flatly denied very early in the church's history. By the way, the fact that the early church spent so much time, I remember when I first started studying church history, how astonished I was that so much ink was spilled about how exactly the Father and the Son, the Spirit relate to each other. The God is in his Trinitarianness. This idea of God as Father, Son, as a man who is a husband, a father, and a son, or as water, is referred to as modalism because it sees God as one in various modes, filling various roles. The reason this fails is because it fails to see God in his threeness, that there are 3 distinct persons, that the Father is not the Son is not the Spirit is not the Father. And this illustration, though holding God together in his oneness, doesn't teach us appropriately about God's 3-personness. I am a father and a son, but it's one of me. The one me is the Father, and the one me is the Son. Me as the Father and me as the Son are both substantively me. There is no difference in persons. Both of them are me. I am the Father. I am the husband. I am the brother. I am the friend. I am the son. It's all me in different modes. There's no threeness there. I am the Father. I am the husband. I am the son. Same thing as water. Water cannot be vapor and ice at the same moment. This is and ice is H2O and vapor is H2O. But they're all water in different modes. It takes apart God in his threeness. It's not 3 different things. It's one thing. It's water. It's not 3 different things. It's one thing. It's me. It's a man. So these illustrations fail to articulate well enough God in his threeness. On the other hand, you have illustrations like God being an egg, saying he's like the white and the yellow and the shell, or a 3-leaf clover, right? And again, I understand what we're trying to do with this, but we're trying to understand in a lot of ways the incomprehensible. But when we do that, when we say God is like an egg, we are denying God in his oneness, because an egg, the white is different than the shell. Those are 2 different substances. They are very different. They are not one. They are not connected. They are different things that are working together. And so we're denying God in his oneness. The 3-leaf clover is 3 different parts. Each leaf is apart from the other one. So those illustrations deny God's oneness, that he is one, that he is one in being while being 3 in persons. And the other barrier to that is just that we don't know anybody else like that, right? That comparison thing. He is unique in that everyone we know is one being, one person. You watching this are one being and one person. We don't know of anybody that has multiple persons inside of one being. But God is that. God is three persons in one being. So he is one, but the Father is not the Son. The Son is not the Spirit. The Spirit is not the Father. And yet they are all God, co-existent, co-eternal, co-equal in the one being of the Godhead, which is what makes sense of the biblical picture of God. For instance, the idea that God is love, that God is love, and God is unchanging, so he's love today and he'll be love tomorrow, and he was love from the foundation of the world. God is love. Doesn't make sense if the God is just one. Because love is something that must require an object. It must have another person. If I called you and I said, "Hey man, what you up to today?" And you said, "Hey man, just sit in my house loving." And I'm like, "Well, who else is there?" You're like, "Nobody, man, just me, just loving." That is ignorance, right? That makes no sense because you can't love without someone else. Love requires a subject and an object. It requires one to give love and one to receive love. And that would be meaningless if God was one. God couldn't be love. But the fact that he is Trinitarian, that is Father, Son, and Spirit, he can be and is a God that is love, because from the beginning of time, from eternity, before time really, from eternity past, the Father, the Son, and the Spirit have been in perfect love with each other, perfect community with each other. One of those implications being that God did not create out of some loneliness, that God was perfect in love in himself, perfect in love in his community, the Father, Son, and Spirit, and the creation was simply of his will, the overflowing of that love. An early creed says the church confesses the Trinity to be a mystery beyond the comprehension of man. Romans 11:33, oh, the depth of the riches and the wisdom and knowledge of God, how unsearchable his judgments and his paths beyond finding out. Deuteronomy 29:29, the secret things belong to the Lord our God, but the revealed things belong to us and our children forever. There are some things that we're just not going to understand. The depth and the riches and the wisdom and knowledge of the infinite God that are going to stretch our minds beyond comprehension, and this is one of those areas. It's tough because we don't have anything to compare it to. Now, I'm going to stop here for length of video's sake. We'll come back next time, probably next week, and lay out why we believe that God is Trinitarian, being primarily the biblical argument, that the Bible makes two foundational claims which lead to the necessary result of Trinitarian theology. Because you may hear people say the word Trinity is not in the Bible, and it's not. That's true. But neither is the word omnipotent and omniscient, which are words used to describe God. And Trinity is the same way. It's the word that we use to try to describe God, to help us understand him a little better. So I hope that's fun for you. I hope that's helpful. We'll talk more about it in the weeks to come. Love you guys.